Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast. Each week, your host, Casey Hasten, Director of Recruiting at VIP, will bring you valuable insights from thought leaders, introduce you to incredible companies, and bring you tips for landing your dream job from our team of executive recruiters at VIP. And now, Casey Hasten.
Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast, a podcast devoted to adding value to your career or candidate search, brought to you by VIP. I'm your host, Casey Hasten. I'm an executive recruiter, director of recruiting with VIP, and your all-around hiring guru. And I want to welcome all of you today to our 52nd episode, and I'm so excited. And I brought you a really special treat today for our 52nd episode. So let me get right to introducing Frank Agin, and I may have said that wrong, president and founder of AmSpirit Business Connections, a company that offers entrepreneurs, sales representatives, and professionals a platform to exchange high-quality business referrals. He is also the host and facilitator of the Networking RX podcast, a podcast devoted to sharing ideas, insights, and conversations related to professional networking, generating quality referrals, and managing business relationships online and offline. Frank, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. This is great. 52nd. It's amazing.
I know. I could hardly believe it when they told me the other day. They were like, you realize you're coming up on your 52nd episode. And I'm like, I still feel like a beginner sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
But it's a
I know
lot
the
of
feeling.
You know, I love to start the show talking about how I got connected to my guest. And do you remember how we got connected?
Oh, I could make up something really funny that would embarrass you, but we won't. You know, I think it's the power of LinkedIn. You know, people come to me all the time and say, well, LinkedIn doesn't work. And I believe, I could certainly look back at my notes, but I was just doing a search on LinkedIn of podcast hosts and sent you a connection request, and you responded, and we just had a conversation, and there we go.
And from there, you are now responsible for a bunch of our guests that are coming up in the near future. So and some that we've already had. Brian Ahern, for one, his released a couple of weeks ago, I believe. And just so many great guests coming up. I'm just so thrilled. And obviously you have a passion for networking and connecting others. I mean, when I first met you, I'm like, why are you doing this? Why are you spending so much time introducing me to these people? But how has networking helped you get to where you are today?
You know, I get that question all the time, and I always like to turn the question around. It's easier to answer what have I achieved without networking, because everything in life it touches on networking. You know, I got through high school because I had a supportive group of people, and people think of networking as just business and getting sales and getting promotions and things like that. But networking is really everything. It's our relationships with people around us and getting information and opportunities and introductions to other people. And so relationships are everything. We haven't done anything without relationships.
That is so very true. You know, and it's so interesting when I meet people, I'll usually, I tell them, I want you to be my new best friend, you know, because that's how I feel about people. I want everybody to be my best friend. And it's hard to keep up with a lot of best friends, but I try. So how do you keep up with your people, your connections?
You know, I use Outlook, so they're all in Outlook, and I put notes in there to keep track of when we talked, when I was on podcasts and things like that. And I'll set reminders to circle back to people. Some people I don't necessarily need to, like Brian Ahern, for example. He's somebody, he's a bad penny. He keeps turning up in my life one way or another, because I'll run into somebody like you who needs great guests. It's like, well, Brian Ahern. You know, and people fall in and out. I'm really looking for, the types of people I try to keep in my life are the people where it's really mutually beneficial. You know, whereas a client, you're always selling to the client. Mm-hmm. You know, that's kind of a sales relationship, but people who just were referring people back and forth, those are almost easy to kind of keep touch of. They just naturally happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So can you kind of explain to our audience what the goal of networking is and how can someone set themselves up for networking success?
Yeah, how I define networking is two or more people working towards their mutual success. You know, and so networking is me introducing you to people and you introducing me to people. It's sharing information. Hey, I'm struggling with this issue. Uh, I'm trying to title a book, trying to come up with a title for a book, throwing that out at people. I think a lot of times people think of networking as just sales or getting a promotion or getting a job, and it's really everything having to do with our lives and reaching out to people. So that's really kind of how I look at networking and how I go about it.
Would you agree that I think one of the things that turns me off the most when I go to a networking event are those people that have their cards and they're like, their business
Yeah.
cards. And I'm like, let me get to know you. Let's make sure there is mutual interest and mutual benefit here. And it's not that I would ever be rude to anybody, but would you recommend to someone that they not go in cards a-blazing?
Oh, absolutely. I tell people when you go into events, you're not there to sell. You're there to get to know people. It's a relationship, and take the time, learn about them. It's not about, don't worry about what you have to say. Worry about what you're going to get them to say. Get them talking, find out other things, where they're from. For me, usually I'm a sports guy, usually involved, okay, you're in the Dallas Fort Worth area, correct? So something about the Cowboys. And I was on a podcast with somebody in Dallas a couple weeks ago, and I brought up the Cowboys, and she's like, I'm a Packer fan. I'm like, oh my gosh, so am I. But you know what? You're looking for things you have in common, and professional football had nothing to do with our relationship with professional football had nothing to do with the professional nature of the conversation. It's just something that we could talk about, whether it's kids or travel or hobbies or whatever it might be. So you want to develop those relationships. And so people who are out there doing as you put it, with the card dealers, the Vegas dealers, they're really hurting themselves.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to open up that conversation and build that rapport, whether you do it through sports or some other, tendency, before you just go in for the kill. And I believe that if you develop that relationship, that when opportunities arise, for example, one of my friends that I met through networking, one of my best friends, by the way, she, a year later, never asked her for anything, never asked her for any referrals or anything like that. But a year later, I get a call from a local business owner, and he goes, hey, I need an accounting manager. Rainey said you were the one to call to help with this search.
Yeah.
It's not that you're going to get you won't get that gratification immediately this way, but I think you'll get more of it in the long run.
Yeah. Well, I think as humans, we are hardwired to help one another. I mean, it's just, it goes back eons. Networking is not, the 80s, the 90s, or the new millennium. It goes way back. I tell people George Washington met Betsy Ross at church. So when he was looking for a seamstress to sew the American flag, here's the woman who sits next to him in church. It wasn't the yellow pages or anything like that. It was a relationship. But when we have relationships with people and we just focus on helping the other person, they naturally want to reciprocate. And I would imagine your friend was beaming when the opportunity came, because you had done things for her. And I don't know what they were, but even just emotional support, being a friend is huge.
Absolutely. And I probably don't know what those things are either, but I think, again, just being there when she, wanted to go have a quick happy hour or something like that, I think can mean the world to somebody, especially right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about your podcast, the Networking RX, and what are some of the topics you cover? And first of all, what inspired you to create it?
Well, I run an organization. I run a it's a membership-based referral organization. We bring in entrepreneurs, sales reps, professionals, and into a weekly meeting where they learn about each other and exchange referrals, just kind of as a backdrop. And that's really what I'm about. Um, that's what I want to be known for professionally. Um, but what was happening is time as the organization grows, it's harder and harder for me to connect with the membership. And I'll use this as an example. There came a time in Sam Walton's life, the founder of Walmart, where he could not visit every store. He just couldn't, and he had to just come to grips with that and find another way. And so that's really where the podcast was born, is my way of sharing all the things I've done. I've written I don't know how many books, articles, um, on professional networking, on professional relationships. And I wanted to have a vehicle that I could share those things with the membership. And so that's what really kind of kicked it off. And initially, I was really kind of worried about running out of material. But as I started podcasting, then I got into interviewing people. And that took me in a whole nother direction. And then people started forwarding me information, you know, studies that are out there that people do about why handshakes are important, and you know why when you go to make small talk, why small talk is important, why finding things in common are important. And these are research that's done at large research institutions. So I talk about those sorts of things. It's not really the nuts and bolts of networking. I do talk on that a little bit, but it really kind of gets into the science and the art of networking.
I love that. And I am going to have to go binge on your podcast. So
All right, you do that.
so in today's world, a lot of our networking is happening online. In fact, you just launched a new group that I'm so fortunate to be a part of, which we have another meeting coming up pretty soon. But what are some of the advantages and challenges of using social media for networking purposes?
You know, I get that question a lot, Casey. People, you know, hey, do you think networking's done with social media? And the reality is it's not. We networked before we had any sort of electronic communication. We networked before we had the phone. All the phone did was make it easier for us, you know, and social media just makes it easier. But really what we need to be doing is we need to be creating this know, like, and trust amongst each other. You and I spoke. You know, we connect on LinkedIn, thought enough to have a phone call. We had a phone call, had a good feeling about one another. There was a know, like, and trust that led me to connect you to people, and you to connect me to people. And so, you know, what is all social media is doing, all Zoom is doing, all these electronic platforms, is it's making it easier for us to communicate further and faster. I have a call next week with somebody over in India who's got a networking group. You know, who would have thunk it, right?
That is interesting. You know, on the flip side of that, though, on the social media, one of the things that really, I don't want to say it annoys me, but I'm just like, did you think that through? You know, is
Yeah.
when somebody connects with me and their very first message is, and this is literally no lie, a message I got: hi, I'm a dentist in the area. I'd love to take care of your teeth. Click on my Calendly link to set up an appointment. And I'm
Yeah.
like, unfollow. You know, it's like you said, there's no like and trust there.
Yeah. You know, and I run into that all the time as well. And I don't know how, I always use personal relationships to try and create an epiphany with somebody as to why that doesn't work. But I'll have guys who will do that to me, and I'll say, listen, when you met your wife, did you just walk into the bar and grab her by the hand and lead her out of the bar? He's like, oh no, of course not. No, it was, you know, you asked her on a date. There was this courtship, right? And that's really how networking's got to operate as well. Is that, you know, there's got to be this courtship. Hey, I just want to meet you. I want to learn about you. You know, oh yeah, I'm a dentist. You know, in time, you're going to be referring either yourself or other people just because they've gotten to know you, like you, and trust you. And people, that's the problem with social media, is that people get impatient. They get what we'll call Twitter muscles. They're just gonna do something, and there's the rejection is going to be so meaningless that they can do that. But it really doesn't work. And I don't think that they when it's not working, they think they just need to do more of it. And in reality, they need to do less of it.
Yeah. And you know, that's so true. Like in sales, you know, that's it. Everybody says it's a numbers game. And
Yeah.
I think for those that don't want to put in the hard work, it can be a numbers game. But I think for those like myself that are willing to build those relationships, that's again going to have the longer payoff, not just the immediate gratification, you know, because I have people that I work with that come back to me. Like I just had one candidate that I worked with 6 years ago that just came back to me for another job search. Now she wouldn't have done that if I hadn't built a relationship with her over the years, right?
Right.
And I didn't place her the first time I worked with her. She ended up finding a job on her own. So I when I work with candidates or clients, you know, I'm very selective. I work with very few of them so that I can give them the most amount of my time. And I believe that's what makes me successful as a recruiter and in hiring.
Oh, I would be willing to bet that's what makes you successful. It's all about the relationship. And somebody who thinks they can use networking to make quota is mistaken.
True.
You know, you use networking to build relationships, and in time, like your friend, you know, she sent you somebody. She's going to send you somebody else. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. You know, she's going to do it again, and you've already really kind of invested the time. You're still going to have to continue, but you've really kind of set in motion a referral machine with her and others.
Absolutely. I'm going to do it. I'm going to mention him. Bob Berg, go giver. You got to give as much as you can. So I think, and then that law of reciprocity, it'll come back to you. But you don't give with the intent of receiving, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in one of your podcasts called LinkedIn Quality versus Quantity, you discuss the value of having many LinkedIn connections, but also emphasize the importance of having valuable and meaningful connections. How can someone ensure that they're building valuable relationship with someone they're connected with?
Well, you know, in that episode, just in my general conversation about LinkedIn, I have about 16,000 connections on LinkedIn. And I don't brag about that, but how my philosophy on LinkedIn, there's different philosophies. There's some philosophies where it's, okay, I'm only going to connect with the people that I've had coffee with, you know, and I think that's a little restrictive. And then there are other people, it's like, you know, anybody with a letter in their name, I'm going to connect with, right? Anybody. And I try to be a little more targeted. I try to connect with people who are involved with chambers, who are involved with podcasting, who are kind of Uber networkers. And I am very liberal about reaching out to those people and seeing if they're willing to connect. And that's just a connection. Mm-hmm. And that's the quantity piece of it. The quality piece of it is how many of those people then can turn into relationships. You and I were just a connection, but it turned into a relationship. And that's where the quality comes in. And so that's how I kind of look at those. You know, you kind of have to go through the quantity. You know, it's like kissing frogs. It's, you know, knocking on doors or whatever. But eventually you find the quality. Not everyone's going to be quality. Not everyone's going to connect with me. Not everyone's going to want to have a conversation with me. People are going to want to have conversations with me because they want to sell me something. But there's that small percentage that makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah. And I love when I was introducing you to one of my network the other day, and I really loved what you said at the end when you were responding. And you said, I won't be so presumptuous as to connect with you on LinkedIn yet. And that's when I knew that that was going to be a relationship that you valued, because you didn't want to just seem like a super connector, you know, in a bad way. Yeah. So I really appreciate it.
She connected with me then.
Good. I think so. You're really going to enjoy that one. So I won't talk about her right now. But
good.
So we help many young people take their first step in their professional careers, and I'm sure that you do the same. What's one mistake that new graduates make when networking, and what could they do differently?
You know, I got this question the other day. What's the biggest mistake people make when they go out and network? And I say, you know what, there's a lot of mistakes you can make. The biggest mistake you make is not doing it. Because people are so afraid that they're going to get their feelings hurt or whatever, and they end up not doing it. You know, when I started out, I worked at a really big law firm. I was an attorney, and when I went into private practice, I had no idea how to get clients, and so I was that bad actor out at, you know, doing the thing with the cards, right? That was me. And then I ultimately, you know, kind of, so I made mistakes, but I was out there, and then I fixed those mistakes. And so, you know, I would just encourage people to get out there, and, you know, and it doesn't have to be a networking event. It doesn't have to say networking event or trade show or after hours. Going to a tailgate party, really networking, you know, just calling you up and saying, Casey, if you have time, I would love a cup of coffee or just to come in and just meet you. You know, those are networking. So certainly just do those sorts of things, get out there. Networking works. It's not always going to work exactly how you want it to work, right? It's not going to work when you want it to work. It's not going to work where you want it to work. You just kind of need to get out there and meet people and develop those relationships, and it'll pay off.
Yeah, and you need to trust that those opportunities will come exactly when they're supposed to, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think one of my mistakes that I make when it comes to networking is kind of twofold. Used to be, I wouldn't make the ask. You know, I would be like, I don't want to be pushy, so I'm not going to make the ask. And Leah Woodford, the lady that you're going to meet, she really kind of set me straight on that and taught me, you know, it was something that her dad told her while she was growing up. And she goes, Casey, get your ask, notice the "k" on the end, ask in gear. And I was like, okay. I mean, it was almost like I was given permission to do that. But then at the same time, I think that I have to be careful because I am that type of personality where I want to get right to the point. And sometimes I'll ask too quickly. So it's kind of a fine line, I think.
Well, it is. I don't know if I've introduced you. Did I introduce you to Dr. Wayne Baker, University of Michigan? Okay. Yes. He's another great one, but he's got the book out there. All you have to do is ask. And I don't know if he's been on or coming on. But it's it's a great book, but there's a distinction in the book that he makes that a lot of people kind of blow past. They look at the book, and really it's 20 years of research, you know, saying the thing that's holding you back is not generosity, it's you asking. But he makes the distinction in the book that there are really two types of asks out there, and actually looked into it. There's research on this, but there's the dependent ask, and the dependent ask is, Casey, send me a franchisee. That's a dependent ask, you know, or a charity saying, just give me money. That's a dependent ask because you're going to have to keep coming back. I need more money. I'm back again. More money, more money. And the independent ask or the empowering ask is, Casey, could you introduce me to other podcast hosts so I can further network myself so I'm better able to find my own franchisees? You know, so it's the difference between give me a fish or teach me to fish. It's sort of a logic. And to me, that's really powerful because I see a lot of people out there making that dependent ask, you know, do the thing for me that will change my life, that will help me meet quota. No, you need to meet quota, you know, but I will point you in the right direction or give you the information, but you need to go and you need to do the hard work. So that really kind of stuck out to me in that book.
Well, and I'm sure that we will talk about this when Dr. Baker comes on, but, you know, and you introduced me to so much, my head's almost going to explode, but the reciprocity ring, which led me to Give a Toss, which is a great platform that does just that. It's the, you know, safe place to ask and to offer help. So I think that that's really important, and it resonates so well with me, you know, being definitely of the go-giver mindset, and I believe that is a go-giver mindset, right?
Yeah.
So I love that, and I just love that, and I love that a lot of his research is focused in the energy space amongst teams.
Yeah.
For like 20 years. Yeah. Incredible.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's going to be a great conversation. So let's talk a little bit about people that might not be as extroverted as you or myself, you know, people with introverted personalities. What can they do to become better networkers and overcome, you know, anxieties about meeting people at a networking event?
All right, here's my secret. I'm an introvert.
No.
You know what? I don't enjoy going to parties. I love to go to the movies. I go to the movies by myself. I'm not a, I don't need to have people around. Some people need to have people around. I will go to things. I mean, that's because that's who I am, because professionally what I do. So I will go to things, but I do enjoy, you know, just watching a movie, and I don't need to have that. Anyhow, neither here nor there. My point in the whole introvert extrovert thing is it's really kind of a lot of nonsense, because people who are introverts can be successful as well with respect to networking. In fact, I think a lot of times extroverts get themselves into trouble because they kind of play that party clown role, that they've got to be the center of attention, and that can tend to hurt them. Whereas introverts can quietly build those relationships. Now, they may not be comfortable going into the big networking event, or whatever it might be, but they're very good at building relationships. And so sometimes I think I don't know that it matters so much, but when I do have people who approach me and say, well, listen, I don't like to go to big networking things. I'm introverted. I'm introverted too. And I force myself to go to those networking things. Again, the biggest mistake you'll make is not doing it, but I'll go out to them, and I have this mindset when I go in, and I call this the cloak of invincibility. Not invisibility, invincibility. The cloak of invincibility is simply this: I am walking in there and I'm here to help somebody. I'm going to here to be somebody's superhero. I'm going to try and connect people, and nobody rejects a hero. Nobody rejects somebody who's there to help. And so that just takes all the anxiety away. I'm coming in here, I have nothing to sell. I'm here to help people. I'm going to connect people. Everybody I meet, I have the ability to help them through somebody else I know, or they can help somebody else I know. And that's my objective. And that just takes all that anxiety away.
I love that. I really do. And I think you're right about what you said about extroverts, because I am like, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm like a 20 when it comes to being extroverted. And
right.
I tend to sometimes dominate the conversation, and that's not good. In fact, I had one of my coaches told me one time, he's like, and I'm going to coaching school right now, and my coach was like, Casey, why do you want to be a coach? And I was like, and I gave him all the reasons why, and he goes, you don't listen well. And I went, that's a problem. So I've been working on it.
Yeah, we can all grow. We can all grow. Yeah.
I think that's why coaching school has been so good for me, because it has taught me to just zip it and listen,
Yeah.
Which I can also apply to networking.
Yeah.
So, so earlier this year, you wrote a blog series about the 30-second commercial. And I think this ties really well to when you're in a networking event. What is a 30-second commercial, and what advice can you give to listeners to help them create one of their own?
Yeah, I mean, a 30-second commercial is just kind of like I don't want to call it a pitch, but it's just, somebody asks who you are, and you really need to be ready with some sort of answer. And it doesn't have to be a pitch, but they're not going to listen to you go on for 10 minutes, about your life. I was born in Chicago, and they just want the quick and dirty. It's like I tell my kids in sports, every minute you're in the game is an audition for the next minute, right? And that's what you're doing. And that's the same thing with respect to your 30-second commercial. It's just a short little snippet intriguing them to want more. Oh my gosh, you're an executive recruiter. That is really neat. I don't think I've ever met anybody who does that. Tell me more. And then you kind of go on. And that's really what you're trying to do is just give them enough so they want more.
Exactly. And I love that you call it a commercial instead of like an elevator pitch, because I think that when you do share your little story with people, that it's more like a commercial, in the fact that, you're still keeping it short and simple, right? But in addition, if you're in an elevator, you've got a captive audience. But if you're in a networking group, you don't. So you've got to have a hook, just like a commercial does, to keep that person from changing the channel, right? From switching to the next person. And that's one of the things that I tell my candidates as well when I'm prepping them for their interviews is, the question they always get is, tell me a little bit about yourself. right? I'm like, this is your chance to shine, to set yourself apart
Right.
from all the other candidates. You need to have this nailed down, and don't be boring. You need to have a hook. Think of
Yeah.
something that's going to make you stand out from all the other
Yeah.
candidates and keep you dancing
Well,
in the
and
hiring manager's head.
yeah, that's the value you bring. You're not just a connector. You're prepping them. You're like getting a prize fighter ready for a fight. That's what you do.
I just had the Rocky theme song go through my head and it almost fell out of my mouth. I'm so glad it
Okay.
didn't.
But it's true. That's great advice, to
Yeah.
try and help the people. I went to an interview once and they just, they started asking me if I had questions. Now, I thought you had questions for me. I was horribly underprepared and didn't get the job, which is good because I wouldn't be here if I did. So just perfect.
I'm curious how you transitioned from your work as a lawyer into this great connector.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm in Columbus, Ohio. Not from here. I went to law school, never intended to stay, got a job working in a big public accounting firm as a tax consultant. And I hated it. Great job, great pay, great everything. But and I knew I didn't want to stay, but after about 5 years, that's who I was. I was a tax consultant, and every recruiter that called, that was the opportunity. I don't want to do this anymore, but that's who you are. And so I decided to go into private practice as just kind of a way to take a step back and figure out what my next step forward would be. And when I became an attorney in private practice, I had no idea how to get clients. And so, I really didn't do a great job of it, but that led me into essentially what's the organization I own now. Somebody introduced me to it. And when I visited for the first time, immediately it made sense that I could lift my whole world by helping other people. It just made total sense because I can sit and I can brag, Casey, about you all day long to people and be just totally energized by the end of the day because I've helped you. And if I brag on myself for 15 minutes, it's exhausting because we're so vulnerable when we're beating our own chests. And so I became very involved in the organization, became its first franchisee, and then in the early 2000s had an opportunity to buy it out. And I jumped at it, and I told my wife, I'm like, you know what? If I stay being an attorney, I know where I'll be 30 years from now, and it's not a bad life. It's not a bad life, but I know where I'll be. If I go down this path, I have no idea, and that excites me.
A little bit of a risk
I can
taker.
build something. Yeah. Well, it's not. I mean, it's not even so much a risk. It's just, it's a blank canvas. Being an attorney, you have lines you need to draw in. Here's a blank canvas. So that's really kind of how it all started out.
That is amazing. I love it when people make such a pivot in their life. And I think I shared this story with you. I mean, my first career was in accounting, for 20 years. And then to pivot from accounting, from budgets to sales, I was like, okay, let's do this, So it was really amazing and definitely a good decision. So I'm sure you feel the same way today, that it was a really good pivot. So
yeah.
Frank, I cannot believe it, but we are almost at the end of our time, and I've got to get to our VIP questions because you have to answer them. So,
okay.
But thank you. This has been a great conversation, as I knew it would be, and I just so appreciate your time, your friendship, and your introductions. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And don't be mad at me about the questions.
Okay, go ahead.
So if you were chosen to be one of the first colonists on Mars, what 3 things or people would you take with you?
I'd have to say I'd bring my 3 kids. I love my kids, and but they would be useful because they all have different skill sets.
Okay.
My oldest son is very technical. He would be good on that end of it. My daughter is really kind of very single-minded and kind of a doer, getting things done, seeing things through. My youngest son, he's just got a great personality. He would keep us laughing. So I'd have to say my 3 kids.
Okay. It's the
They
first
might not
time
go for that.
somebody's voted for all their kids.
Yeah.
This is a question I love. What is one thing you do each morning to set your day up for success?
There's a lot of weird things about Frank Agin, I tell people, but I get up at 4:45 every day and go for a walk. And my wife has started to come along with me, but take the dog for a walk for about four miles. And it just kind of, I just have, my whole day is kind of set up then. I know what I need to do. I can think through problems. So yeah, getting up and going for a long walk.
I love, well, and I think that's really good because that can almost be like a silence and meditation, to getting your mind right. I love that. And I did say your name wrong in the introduction, and I apologize. I don't think I've ever heard you say your last name. It's always just been Frank.
Well, that's fine. You know what? I went to 3 years of law school, and when I graduated, I was the first one introduced, and they messed up my name, so I'm used to it. You got Frank right. That's good.
You got Frank. Hey, I get Casey Hasten a lot. I'm like, really?
Right.
No. All right.
Well.
My final question. If your life's work was being summarized in a news article, what would the headline be?
Oh boy, that's a toughie. Success through giving. Success through giving. That's pretty much it.
I love it. Well, Frank, you have been an amazing guest. Thank you for joining us on our anniversary. This has just been perfect.
Thank you.
And one last thing to say to you. You are a VIP.
Thank you very much.
And that's a wrap for today. Join us next week here on the We Are VIP podcast. We'd love to know how we can help you be a VIP. To find out more, log on to wearevip.com.